All right, welcome everyone. I now call the June 4th, 2024 regular City Council meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this point, we'll take a moment to take roll call of the council members by position number. Please say here when the clerk calls your name. City Clerk?
Thank you. Councilmember Zorns?
Here.
Mayor Thompson?
Here.
Councilmember Alders?
Here.
Councilmember Kurd?
Here.
Councilmember Menke? Councilmember Dodd? Deputy Mayor Alcabra?
Here.
All present with the exception of Councilmembers Menke and Dodd, who are absent and excused.
Thank you. Before we continue with the rest of the agenda, I'd like to reiterate some meeting guidelines. For remote meeting attendees, please speak clearly and pause frequently, and mute your microphone when not speaking. First up is meeting agenda approval. Tonight's agenda included an executive session and associated action as items 11A and 12A. Before seeking approval of the agenda, I want to note that both items are no longer needed and are being removed from tonight's agenda. For clarity, please note that item 13A, which is a closed session for labor negotiations, will take place as scheduled. Are there any other changes to the meeting agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to public engagement opportunities. We have the Park at Bothell Landing Project open house Thursday, June 13th from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Park at Bothell Landing. You can connect with park experts and share your thoughts on 3 potential design concepts. Our Human Services Needs Assessment Survey is still going now through June 18th. You can share your experiences, needs, or concerns to help us make better planning decisions and know where to allocate resources. And then we've also got the blood drive at Bothell Police Department on Thursday, June 20th from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. in the Police Department Community Room right inside the front door. You can donate with Bloodworks Northwest and give the gift of life. Sign up for an appointment. We have 2 proclamations tonight. The first proclamation is LGBTQIA plus Pride Month proclamation, and Councilmember Kurd is going to read this proclamation into the record for us.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll read the proclamation. LGBTQIA plus Pride Month. Whereas the City of Bothell recognizes the month of June 2024 as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, and asexual LGBTQIA plus Pride Month and observes Pride Month by raising the Progress Pride flag throughout the city to honor the history of the LGBTQIA plus liberation movement. And whereas the Progress Pride flag is widely recognized as a symbol of pride, inclusion, and support for the social movements that advocate for LGBTQIA plus people, and the City of Bothell is committed to supporting their visibility, dignity, and equality in our diverse community. And whereas, though the LGBTQIA plus community continues to be a target of violence, harassment, and discrimination, it continues to thrive through efforts of the community itself and through the support of LGBTQIA plus affirming spaces, community organizations, and individual allies. And whereas the City of Bothell recognizes that allyship is not merely a label, but an ongoing commitment to actively support and advocate for the rights, lives, and dignity of LGBTQIA plus individuals. And whereas the City of Bothell recognizes the importance of fostering an environment where all individuals, regardless of sexual orientation, gender identity, or expression, feel safe, affirmed, and celebrated for their authentic selves. And whereas Pride Month provides an opportunity for residents of Bothell to come together in solidarity, celebrate diversity, and reaffirm our shared values of respect, acceptance, and love for one another. Now, therefore, I, Councilmember Carson Kurd, on behalf of Mason Thompson, Mayor of the City of Bothell, do hereby proclaim June 2024 as LGBTQIA plus Pride Month in the City of Bothell. Be it resolved that the Progress Pride flag was raised on May 31st at City Hall to recognize all the LGBTQIA plus community members whose influential and lasting contributions to our neighborhoods make the City of Bothell a vibrant community in which to live, work, and visit. And I understand Amelia Rayborn and others are here to accept.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Amelia. I'm a board member of Eastside Pride, an organization on the East Side focused on education, community, and advocacy of LGBTQIA plus rights. I'm honored to be here today with fellow community members of Bothell and the LGBTQIA plus community. First and foremost, thank you to Gabby Kuna, Eastside Pride, and council members for inviting me to speak tonight. We are gathered here to receive the Pride Proclamation in honor of continued progress towards LGBTQIA plus equality in Bothell. I recently watched footage of the first gay liberation parade after the Stonewall riots in 1970. It was beautiful to see these folks celebrate publicly after a lifetime of hiding, and it struck me that now they have witnessed over half a century of fighting for their identities to be considered equal and visible. Their fight has become our fight now for equal rights, visibility, and value. Today, Bothell shows its solidarity with the LGBTQIA plus community and against harassment and discrimination. I chose to live and own a business in Bothell because of its inclusivity and welcoming energy for all identities. In your continued support of LGBTQIA plus equality, Bothell shows we are a safe space for queer families and that queer folks aren't just welcomed here, they're wanted here. So let's remember that our collective power continues to make progress and that June may be Pride Month, but this awareness is needed year-round. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have a proclamation for National Gun... Oh. Sorry. It's not you, it's me.
Don't worry, it's short.
Take your time.
I'm Cynthia. I live here about 3 blocks that way. And I'm the gay grandma in PFLAG. We were thrilled to have our first LGBTQIA plus festival in the park the other day. It was fabulous. It didn't rain. I love living here. I've lived in Bothell for 26 years, the rest of it in Seattle. You've made it a safe and welcoming and beautiful place for us to live. And we thank you. That's it.
Thank you. And I just wanted to point out, it's one of those things that we don't talk about very often, but this seems like a really appropriate time to do it, is City Council, we're not, like, there are 3 members of the LGBTQIA plus community on our City Council that are representing you. So, like, we're not just happy you're here, like, we are you also, and just, we're all together, and we're really glad you're here, but we're here. Can I go now? Okay. All right, we have a proclamation for National Gun Violence Awareness Day. Whereas every day more than 120 Americans are killed by gun violence and more than 200 are shot and wounded, with an average of more than 18,000 gun homicides every year. And whereas Washington has an average of 887 gun deaths every year, with a rate of 11.2 deaths per 100,000, and the 40th highest rate of gun deaths in the United States. And whereas support for the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens goes hand in hand with keeping guns away from people with dangerous histories, and whereas gun violence prevention is more important than ever as we see an increase in firearm homicides, non-fatal shootings, and increased calls to domestic violence hotlines, and whereas in January 2013, Hadia Pendleton was tragically shot and killed at age 15. And on June 7th, 2024, what would be her 27th birthday, people across the U.S. will recognize National Gun Violence Awareness Day and wear orange in tribute to Hadia Pendleton and other victims of gun violence. And whereas anyone can join this campaign by pledging to wear orange on June 12th to help raise awareness about gun violence, and whereas we pledge our commitment to reduce gun violence and encourage responsible gun ownership to help keep our families and communities safe. Now, therefore, I, Mason Thompson, Mayor of the City of Bothell, declare June 7th, 2024 to be National Gun Violence Awareness Day and encourage all community members to support local efforts to prevent the tragic effects of gun violence and to honor and value human lives. And I believe we have some folks here to accept. Shanti Lang, and Jane Weiss.
And friends.
This is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Oh,
so
let's
much.
get a big
Photo
happy
up here.
family.
Yep.
Awesome.
Oh, we got to get you in here.
Yeah, you should come over here or come up.
Here, I'll hold it and you. Okay. Hold on. You can do this.
Smile.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sabrina. That's way close.
Not on my hand. Thank you so much. My name is Shanti Lang. I'm the Washington State Elections Lead for Moms Demand, and I live just down the street in Canyon Crest, Bothell, just a few blocks from here. An enormous thank you to the Bothell City Council, Mayor Thompson, who my daughter was very excited to come meet because Paw Patrol has a mayor, and so she's pretty excited to be here. For this proclamation declaring the first Friday in June National Gun Violence Awareness Day. This is the 10th year of Wear Orange, and we invite everyone to wear orange with us this coming Friday. Orange is the color that Hadia Pendleton's friends wore in her honor when she was shot and killed in Chicago in 2013 at the age of 15. Since then, orange has been the defining color of the gun violence prevention movement. We wear orange for Hadia, for the 120 people who are shot and killed every day in our country, and for the countless families and communities traumatized by the gun violence. On a personal level, my 2 young children, who I'm sure you've all seen and heard, are growing up here in Bothell. This one's starting kindergarten next year. And I'm so thankful for Bothell City Council and everyone for recognizing this as something that must be addressed and help us rally for a safe community. So thank you again, and if you have questions or any interest in volunteering with Moms Demand, please come find any of us after this. Thank you.
I'm only going to say one thing is you can look up wearorange.org and learn more. And there's events starting on Friday night on 185th and I-5. We're holding signs and wearing orange to be visible. And then again on Saturday and Shoreline at 175th by the ponies, if you know where that is, on 175th Ronald Bogg Park. We'll be wearing orange and holding signs from noon to 2. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming in. All right, next up is public comment. The city has accepted public comment in writing, as well as accepted sign-up sheets for those who wish to speak at tonight's meeting. Written comments submitted to the city clerk no later than 3 p.m. today were forwarded to all city council members and are part of the record. When the clerk calls your name, you will have 3 minutes to speak. Please note that council will receive your input, but upon the advice of our city attorney, we do not engage in discussion of these topics. Staff will make note of items requiring follow-up. City clerk, do we have anybody signed up?
We have one person submit written comments. They were from Andrew Nelson regarding the Pride Month proclamation and events, and thanking the council for those. Other than that, I do not have anybody signed up to speak. However, if anybody in the audience wishes to do so, please step to the podium, state your name, and you'll have 3 minutes. That's all I have. There's nobody on the virtual audience either.
Thank you, city clerk. All right, next up, we have the reports, starting off with the city manager report. City manager.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Council. It's hard to follow the esteemed welcome of a mayor from that perspective, but I'll do my best. We have a combination of a quick update, an introduction, and then a staff report tonight. In terms of the update, really in the basic form, somehow it's June. So with the calendar turning to June, one other milestone that we've reached with that is that we're now at the 1-year anniversary of the formation of the Regional Crisis Response or RACER agency. The city of Bothell was part of a partnership for a few years before that as well with some of our neighboring jurisdictions. And those, for those who don't know, it Racer does provide a alternative response in times of crisis, and we are partners with the City of Bothell partners with Kenmore, Kirkland, Lake Forest Park, and Shoreline. One thing just to note for the City Council is that in celebration of the one-year anniversary, you will have received an invitation for the late afternoon of June 26th at Shoreline City Hall to have some opportunity to celebrate and reflect and to hear some of the statistics. That'll be followed by one of the Principals Assembly meetings, of which Councilmember Aldrich is the representative appointed from the City Council. So we should have some information from that first year to report back to Council, but also just wanted to make sure that everyone knew that you are invited to come celebrate together in Shoreline. For an introduction, I am pleased to introduce Council tonight to Matt Cowen, the Fire Chief from Shoreline Fire, and based on the action that took place at your May 21st meeting, we have now begun the transition of having Chief Cowen oversee operations of the Bothell Fire Department. So with that, and to hear a little bit more and for some further introductions, I wanted to turn things over to Chief Cowen. And Chief, I will turn it over to you to say a few words and introduce your partner.
Thanks, Kyle. And thank you to the entire council for having me here. It's really great. I was able to introduce myself before the meeting started, but I've been watching virtually, and it's really great to be able to be here actually in person. And even more so that you chose and selected to work with Shoreline as we started this executive ILA for Executive Administrative Services. So thank you very much. I have a few things to say, but I'd really like to know if you have any questions for me and that I can address tonight. I've shared some of my contact information. You can always get a hold of me through Kyle or Tony, and I am, would be honored to be able to spend more time with you in developing the relationship further. We started with our transition literally yesterday. It's been kind of a whirlwind. I really do want to thank Kyle, Tony, Mark Rise, and Matt Pruitt. They've all been really great to work with as we've worked on this transition and making sure that we were setting up for success. I have with me my previous Deputy Chief of Operations, Andres Orms, who is now, partnering with Jerry Hughes, the previous Deputy Chief of Operations here. They're both co-administrative chiefs at the Assistant Chief rank, and they're going to be working together very tightly for the next few months while Andres gets up to speed on Bothell and developing relationships and so forth before Jerry actually retires. And he's been really selfless and been great to work with as well, and postponing his retirement to try and make this all this work as far as the regionalization piece. And on the regionalization side of things, this is a great first step. I've already started working on some of the relationships and being able to look at some of the things that we can do even more collaboratively together, smaller projects and so forth. But this has been something for some of the people in the area for decades in the making. And I know this isn't a full consolidation or anything like that, but these kinds of steps, I think, just further our partnerships and our relationships. We already partner in the training consortium with our MIH program, with the paramedics that we have employees from Bothell that are joining our paramedic ranks and so forth. And these things are really beneficial to our communities in being able to maintain or improve levels of service and even stretch the taxpayers' dollars even further. So I really applaud you all for taking this first step. So I could go on and on for the next 2 hours if you'd really like. Trust me, Andres will back me up on this. But I'd like to address any questions that you may have and be able to, Andres, if you'll come on up here. Be able to introduce you to Andres Orms. He's going to be your administrative chief. And again, he's working very tightly with the staff. As we continue to develop the infrastructure here, our next step will be to populate a division chief of operations to work underneath Jerry and Andres. So do you have any questions for me or Andres for that matter? He's much better looking and more articulate than I am, so.
I feel like we've had lots of questions, but we've already asked all of them as part of this process. So I
have seen a lot of those questions virtually.
Yeah, I don't have any. I think I think we're good to go, and just appreciate you coming here and introducing yourself, and it's nice to meet you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And as I already stated, if you ever want to get a hold of me, please, I swear this tells me where to eat and drink and breathe. You know, you can always get a hold of me on my phone or give me an email, and I'd love to get together with you, get coffee or whatever, or address your questions as they come up. And as always, just let Tony or Kyle know if you need me to come back to address the council on any of the issues that are coming up.
Perfect. Will do.
All right.
Thank you so
very
much.
Thank you, Chief Cowen and Chief Horms. We appreciate you being here tonight. So finally, we also have one staff report that we would like to present to you tonight. And we're coming to you tonight with our continued effort to keep council up to speed on things that are happening related to your 3-year priorities. We'd done a more comprehensive update earlier, and based on some feedback, we're trying something a little bit more targeted. So tonight's update is going to be about the community engagement strategy, which is part of your priorities, and to hear a little bit about where things are at and some of the ideas and activities that have been taking place. And for that, I am going to turn things over to our Assistant City Manager, Becky Range, to get things started up and to make introductions.
Thank you, City Manager Stannard. Mayor and City Council, thanks so much for your time tonight. I'm very excited to be joined by our new Communications Officer, Kate. We're going to give you just a really quick, high-level staff update. And so we will start that now. Just a reminder, there is no action required tonight. We're just giving you an update on the progress that we've made towards your Council Vision 2040 vision area, a community of trust and respect. We'll just quickly remind you of some background of why we're here today, talk about the engagement strategy that we've been working on, give you an update on some of the completed items that we've already taken care of, and then Kate will talk to us a little bit about what's right around the corner. And then we'll open it up for any questions that you might have. So just a reminder, as Kyle mentioned, last year the council did a lot of great work developing this very inspiring community vision. And your description of Bothell in 2040 described a community that has a very responsive government. It is a government where we seek feedback from everyone in the community through multiple channels. And very importantly, it's a government that's trusted by the community because we've truly listened to what they've said and what they need and what they've requested, and we've incorporated that into our work. One of the strategic priority items that you listed was for us to develop a communications plan. So when staff went back and thought about what you had described and how you had described this 2040 vision, we really thought long and hard, and we decided that a communications plan is a component of what is really needed, which is a larger engagement strategy for the city to operate from. So that's what we went back and worked on. And before we even talk about the engagement strategy, one of the most important things that we talked about on staff is if you ask different members of our team to define community engagement in Bothell, you're going to get lots of different answers. So just to reset with everyone, I want to share with you the definition that the engagement team actually landed on for what is community engagement in Bothell. It's a purposeful and dynamic process that provides opportunities for the community to follow, influence, and participate in decision-making. It's complex, doesn't always seem like it's complex, but there's lots of components to community engagement, and that's how we describe it here. So just real quick, when we thought about the engagement strategy and what it needed to do, well, for us on staff, it needed to be a detailed roadmap that has goals and action items and has phased timelines of when we get things done. That's kind of the most important part. But it also needed to have shared definitions and shared understanding so that staff and boards and commissions and City Council and the community all have the same understanding of where we're going. And it needs to incorporate potentially organizational culture shifts. It needs to think about training and how we all get on the same page. Another thing that it needed to do was deliver a hands-on staff toolkit so that we could put all of the resources and checklists and guides all in one place. So when we developed this engagement strategy, we thought about those things, and then we divided the strategy into 3 core areas. There's no mystery here. The 3 areas do correspond with the 3 levels of engagement that we often think about. So if you think about communications, that's where we think about the communications infrastructure of the work that we do. It's simply sharing information that's clear and engaging and easy to understand. It's sending information out and informing the public and being honest and transparent. So that part of the engagement strategy, it talks a lot about our technology, our platforms and tools. So think about our website, electronic news, think about mailed newsletters, social media, physical signage. So you have the attachment in your packet of the actual engagement plan that has the high-level items, but just a lot of those revolve around how is our website doing what it needs to be doing? Do we need to do a better job with physical signage? And there's lots of action items there that staff, to be honest, we need to improve upon. The second area of the engagement plan is more about consultation and feedback. So we're not just telling the community what's happening, we're asking the community to weigh in on certain things. And so that part of the engagement strategy really talks about how to be more inclusive, how to make sure we're bringing the right people to the table. You'll see items in there about best practices for surveys, how to do a better job with language access, how to do better with interpretation services, those types of things. And the third area is the most complex type of community engagement, and it's also the most important. It's where we really think about what our organizational culture is all about and how do we truly work with the community to develop policies together, to tackle tough situations together, and to kind of co-create solutions. And so in that portion of the plan, you'll see items talking about improvements in our advisory bodies, actually describing all the different types of advisory bodies you could have, how we could do better with in-person engagement, and lots of different checklists for public meetings and that type of thing. We've made some progress. We've actually been working on this for a year, so there's some things we've done. As I mentioned before, one of the most important things was really just to formalize the community engagement program, give it a name, formalize it, talk about the guiding principles, and make sure that we're all on the same page. So we've done that. We also developed an Engagement 101 training, and that was great because, like I mentioned, a lot of folks don't really know what we mean when we say community engagement. So we developed a curriculum for that to help staff and the engagement team really understand what we should be doing. We completed a pretty exhaustive review of our website. So city websites are really difficult sometimes to maintain, and they're big and bulky, but they are absolutely the foundation of our communications and engagement program. So we needed to take a really close look at that and decide where are our gaps, how can we do analytics better, and how do we maybe need to think about restructuring roles or assigning responsibilities in different ways so that that website can be a little bit better. And we have finished that review. We also developed a messaging framework, and it seems kind of simple to think that we need to formalize how we do messaging with the community, but we do. And so we put a messaging framework together that talks about key messaging and how you write for the community so that they really understand what the topic is, especially if it's a complicated topic or something that's a little bit technical. And we just stepped through all the different examples of collateral pieces that we could be using and described them. Do you need a fact sheet for this? Would you like an infographic for this? Would you like a storyboard to communicate whatever it is you're trying to educate the community about or ask for their feedback on? We also, with the help of Gabby, did finish the DEI decision-making tool. It's an equity impact worksheet that just dovetails really nicely with the engagement work because it helps staff guide their day-to-day thinking as they're doing any kind of engagement work to make sure they're looking through that lens. One of the biggest projects that we finished and we're probably the most proud of and the most excited about is that there are all these different things that the strategy is calling for, and they're all in different places and sometimes not even in a place at all. And so we took all of those items and put them together into an engagement toolkit. And it's something for program managers and for engagement staff to be able to use as they plan different types of engagement throughout the city. It has planning templates. It has a communications plan template such that if you have a large ordinance or a policy change or some large decision, that you can step through the checklist pretty easily and plan your engagement. There's also a language access guide that Gabby created for us, which is really wonderful because it's the concrete steps that you take to make sure you're providing information in the appropriate languages so that everyone can participate. There's information about survey best practices, which we're all really learning about surveys and getting a little bit better at that. And there's a public meetings checklist, talks about why you shouldn't maybe have your public meeting at 10 a.m. during the weekday because not everyone should come, or why some folks really don't feel comfortable coming to City Hall. And there's a lot more other items there that help you have a public meeting that's a little bit more inclusive. And there's a lot more in the toolkit, but I won't bore you with it tonight. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Kate, who will talk a little bit about our next steps.
Thank you. So the next steps are pretty straightforward. We're going to implement the aforementioned toolkit. It really is just about ready to go. We want to get just approvals on it. We want to make sure that it aligns with our values once those have been fully established, which it sounds like that's coming pretty soon. And then we will send it off to you all to have a look at as well, and get some stamps of approval on it, and then we'll be able to roll it out to leadership staff and other staff members who will be able to use it in their day-to-day work. We also want to get into recurring engagement training. As Becky mentioned, we have done training, but it's been on a very limited basis. So we want to be able to offer it more broadly and more regularly to leadership staff to make sure that everybody who's on the community engagement team has access to that training. And then we also want to figure out who else needs to have that training, whether that's boards and commissions, whether that's all of you, whether there are other staff members that need to be brought into that process. But we want to get that really up and running instead of just a thing that has existed. And then the last piece is addressing the website program and analytics gaps. Becky mentioned that there was a review of the website, and we've identified what those gaps are, and we're starting to work towards what tools and staff capacity do we need to implement to fill those gaps, because the website really is that foundational piece for the inform part of communications. We want to make sure that everybody knows what's happening, when and where and why. And then with the analytics, we just want to see how that information is performing to be able to measure that folks are in fact seeing when and where and why things are happening. And we go to the next slide. Thank you. As a reminder, there's no action required for you all this evening. But if you have questions for Becky and I, we are happy to take them. And otherwise, we're very grateful for your time.
Councilmember Aldrichs.
I'm really excited for this presentation. Looked forward to it for, I'd say, several years now, and just really appreciate the time and effort and energy that has been put into this plan. I also want to acknowledge Gabby's contributions to the plan with the equity toolkit and some of that kind of background foundational work that goes into accessibility and everything too. So. I'm very curious to learn more about that equity tool. And I don't know, is there a way to share a draft with council? Because I'd love to see kind of how that came together.
Actually, I think on July 9th, we have a DEI update scheduled for you, and I believe that Gabby can speak to that tool at that time.
Great. Well, looking forward to seeing it. Yeah, that is something that I have been requesting, and just love to see the work getting done. It brings me joy. Next up on my list of, I have a couple of questions for you. Last night when we met with the school board and the school district, I heard from the communications director that they were looking forward to learning more about the city's communication engagement and strategy, and to coordinate with the city so that there could be some, I think, sharing of great ideas and also coordinating so that people have consistent ways of communicating with government entities locally, even though they're separate entities and run differently. And so I'm wondering, are you able to make those connections and find ways to partner together?
Absolutely. Carrie and I actually spoke last night.
Okay.
We're developing a close relationship, and we actually spoke about the many things that we could share back and forth. So it's a great point.
I'm glad to hear it. Thank you. And then my last question for you is, community development put out a website and a website engagement platform called Engage Bothell, and I loved it and I was curious to see if that might make its way into and continue use or have expanded use to other departments in the city when, parks or public works or, another agency or another department needs to put information out to the community, if we could all have that central hub. And so is that something that's being considered, or is that something that's being worked towards?
Yes, an online engagement platform is a tool that most all cities are using. And so CD is using Engage Bothell as a pilot for the comp plan. And part of our engagement strategy is to evaluate the online engagement portal and decide, do we want to continue using the same system? And if and how and when we might roll that out to the rest of the city.
Great. I'm glad to hear that it's being considered, and I will always look forward to updates as those decisions are made. So thank you.
Councilmember Curd.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. It's really encouraging to see progress being made on the way that we communicate with the people who we serve. I'm really interested as we start getting into budget season. It sounds like there's a little bit of overlap between when the communications plan is rolling out and when we're talking about budget, but there are impacts associated with communication, financial impacts like mailers, like Engage Bothell, or housing some stuff online. I'm just wondering if maybe while we're in the process of thinking about budget and thinking about how we allocate resources, if it's a priority for council to communicate with the people that we serve, we need to know what some of those impacts are. And so I'm wondering if maybe an executive summary or some sort of like tool where we can start to understand where some of the financial kind of obligations and maybe reach or goals might be, so that we can consider those during budgeting.
We can do that.
Thanks so much.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. This is great. Just like Councilmember Alders, I've been looking forward to this for a while now. So I'm really glad it's happening. And thank you, Gabby. I'm glad that you're here and doing all the DEI work that you're doing. This is why we're here. So it's awesome. Question about the engagement training. Is that something we can participate in?
We can certainly talk about it. Really, by virtue of your role and what you do, you've probably taught the master class on engagement. But if it would be helpful to know some of the background and what we're doing on the staff end, so you can kind of have the assurance of what we're doing, we can certainly look at that. So I'll follow up with Becky and team, and we'll see if there's an opportunity that makes sense.
Thank you.
I was really excited to see in here formalize the demography program to make sure that we know who our city is, that we know what those demographics look like. One of the challenges with public engagement is always, how do you get a representative sample? Like, how do you get a sample of responses that doesn't require you to ask everybody in the community, but is also representative of the community? And it's funny, that's like what I was looking through in here. And then it's like, oh, well, we need to know who they are before we can know if we have a representative sample. So I thought that was really cool.
Thank you for bringing that up. There's actually been a lot of work done on that particular item. And I don't know if I should really be the one to break this hot news here. I feel like maybe I should leave it up to community development. But there was an update of the census data, and we are officially now over 50,000.
Here comes the community development grants.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate both of y'all and all the work that you and everybody else associated with this has put in on it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. So that concludes the city manager portion of the reports.
Perfect. Next up is council committee reports, community reports, and conversations. Councilmember Curd.
Hello, thank you. I attended PSRC's, sorry, this is the one thing on my list, so I want to make sure it's talked about so that I can forget about it. I attended a lunch session with PSRC in Seattle to represent the city of Bothell, because I guess I was the only one available for a lunch meeting in Seattle. And the PSRC convened this meeting to kind of take action on some road safety plans that they have for Puget Sound region, and kind of a priority that they're putting forward to start kind of planning for safe systems approach, which we're kind of already doing in our comp plan stuff. So really kudos to our transportation division for being ahead of the curve, because it was exciting to be able to say, yeah, we're already working on that. We know what that is. And so that was kind of a review for us, but it was encouraging to see other jurisdictions participating, learning, and seeking ways to collaborate. The only item that was voted on was the reappointment of Poulsbo Mayor Becky Erickson as PSRC president and Vice President Dave Summers, Executive Dave Summers. So that occurred, and that's my update. PSRC is the Puget Sound Regional Council. Thank you for catching me on that. And it's a regional planning agency that all the jurisdictions in King, Snohomish, Pierce, and Kitsap counties kind of collaborate with in order to pursue federal funding.
Good answer. Oh, yeah. Councilmember Zarnes?
I'm going to hit the conversation piece of this.
Yeah.
The dam has burst, so I'm apologizing. I'll try to not take up the rest of the evening. First off, being absent for the last couple council sessions, I really appreciated, I went back and reviewed the council meetings and just really appreciated everyone asking questions on the different topics. Y'all did a good job, so I appreciated that. And I owe Councilmember Dodd some special thank yous for my little piece that was missing as I was taking care of family. There's a few things. We have received a few emails that in the last week that are aging related. And from NUSA, we got a really interesting email that was about, what is it called? Being an age-friendly city. That Puyallup became the first city to receive that. Renton and Seattle, these are all big cities. So I acknowledge that being a big city might be part of that. Tacoma is working on an action plan. Shoreline is working on its comp plan, which we're really in the trenches of comp plan, that maybe that might not be the appropriate context in the immediate future. But NUSA offered that if we wanted their assistance to put our own policy together that they would help us out. We've focused on sidewalks and transits as a concern around like our manufactured home communities. We've heard that though the zoning is protected for our manufactured homes, there's some other issues that are making it hard to maintain that. So anyway, noodle that and see if that's something that we want to talk about later. And then we just celebrated Memorial Day. And I had some thoughts about Memorial Day that I wanted to share. I find it heartbreaking that we confuse Memorial Day with Veterans Day and 4th of July. We have heroes that have shaped our country. And in a world that we make celebrities ship our heroes, I just wanted to focus in on we're not a perfect country, and I appreciate that our forefathers said we're working for forming a more perfect union. I heard a quote somewhere that said, we aim for perfection so that we can have excellence, knowing that we will never reach perfection, but we'll be more excellent. And I think we have a history of valuing self-determination and sovereignty. I've heard this old adage that, and it's in a church context, so apologies there, but for looking for a perfect church, once you find it, it will no longer be perfect once you're there. And I think that's true of countries as well, that you can look for a perfect country, but once you put human beings in it, it's no longer perfect. But we do have some strengths. We have a history of valuing self-determination and sovereignty, and I think that resonates with most of the world. We're getting ready to celebrate, recognize Normandy Beach, and I think of my father-in-law, who in today's terms would be considered a kid at 17 years old, was tasked with stacking body parts on Normandy Beach for people who were going to serve our country and protect other people in this world who gave their lives and only got as far as the beach. So here in Bothell, we have military, we have first responders who, when they answered the call, it cost their life. And I just want to mention a few of them. One is Madrozo, another one is Shoup, and another one is K-Rob. And I want to share this line because I think it really resonates what the best about us. And it's from America the Beautiful. It's not America the Perfect, but beautiful. And there's a line that says, "Oh, beautiful for heroes proved in liberating strife, who more than self their country loved, and mercy more than life." And I think whether we're Americans by birth or by choice, the blood of those people who answered that call our veins should flow with gratitude. So when we approach the 4th of July, I hope that will be part of it. And in future Memorial Days, that from the dais we acknowledge Memorial Day. And speaking of heroes, on a light side, I was driving past City Hall on Wednesday, and I noticed a small troop of heroes, volunteers, who were out picking up garbage. Unsung heroes. And we always notice when something's messy, but I think people driving by during that time, seeing volunteers in our city, must have appreciated that there is a group of people who are working to make our little part of the planet better. So that's my end of my little, it wasn't a convo, unless if you guys want to enter in on it, but thank you for letting me have the floor.
I've got one thing I wanted to let the council know about. I let you know a little bit ago that I was asked by Mayor Harrell to be part of a group to talk through a regional approach to dealing with the asylum seekers that are in South King County. This group of mayors requested a meeting with the governor to talk about what a regional solution might look like and what participation could possibly look like. And that meeting is happening next week. And I just wanted to make sure that you all knew that was happening. In my role, I am obviously not able to commit us to anything, but am going to continue to participate in the conversation and see what happens. So that's next Wednesday, so we'll have another meeting before then, and I won't be able to update on it for a couple weeks. So. Tell you what, catch me after the meeting. We're not supposed to go back and forth like this in meetings. But actually, we're probably going to take a break before the study session in a little bit. I know a guy. We are going to move on to the consent agenda. I would love for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Excuse me, Mayor. Is there a projected agenda discussion prior to that?
There is.
Thank you.
I was checking to see if you catch that. Good job. Next up is projected agenda discussion. Is there any items council would like to discuss? Nope. All right, let's try this again. Would anybody like to move to approve the consent agenda? Councilmember Aldrich.
I motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We've got a motion from Councilmember Aldrich and a second from Councilmember Curd to approve the consent agenda. Would anybody like to speak to the motion? Seeing none, City Clerk.
Thank you. Please say yes or no when I call your name. Councilmember Zorns?
Yes.
Mayor Thompson?
Yes.
Councilmember Aldrich?
Yes.
Councilmember Curd?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Alcabra?
Yes.
Passes 5-0 with Councilmembers Dodd and Menke absent and excused.
Thank you very much. All right, next up is our first agenda bill of the evening. It's Agenda Bill 24088, the interim ordinance adopting zoning measures for residential parking in response to Senate Bill 6015. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. And you're correct. We do have one item under ordinances and resolutions tonight, and it is for action tonight. We are going to be joined by our Community Development Deputy Director, Christian Geitz, who there's some positions that you can be new at the city, and it takes a while before you come to council. And I think Christian's in a position where we'll probably see him every other week. So not a new face for long if he still is. As I mentioned, again, this is an item for action, and Christian will explain a little bit why and the timing of it. But rest assured, too, we will also have further discussions on this item to come, no matter what. So I'm going to turn things over to Christian to walk us through the consideration of council tonight.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, council members. Excited to be here first time speaking with you all about a very discrete item about an interim ordinance for parking standards that is a response to a Senate bill that was passed in early March of this year. Just have a few slides to go to, and as City Manager Stannard said, there is an action item with staff recommending approval of the ordinance in order to remain consistent with state law under that bill. I want to run through a little bit of background with this passing. It took us a little bit off guard, as well as a few other jurisdictions working to move through all of our comp plans, all of the housing bills that have been passed, and we are reacting to this bill to establish some new standards and allowances that are quite discrete. So they focus on only residential parking standards for residential development. It does not apply to commercial or other uses. It is along the lines of all the other bills that have been passed, focusing on removing barriers, making more flexibility in residential development permitting, and looking at a few of the top items. Eliminating requirements for parking to be within parking structures, garage, so minimum parking standards. You do not have to park in a garage or a carport, so that's residential up to multifamily. Pretty broad. Design will kind of win out in the end as far as how structure parking will be likely incorporated in those larger projects, but it did move to eliminate that requirement. It modified the parking dimensional standards, and it established some flexibilities for non-conforming situations. I did want to kind of take a step back real quick, though, and talk about what exactly an interim ordinance is, as it might not be something that everyone deals with on a regular basis. So it's temporary or emergency in nature, and it's allowed under state law. It requires the initial passage, which is what we're here to do tonight. It requires a public hearing within 60 days, so nothing is done in the shadows. It's all done out in the open. We are planning to be back in July with a public hearing to discuss the item following kind of the more standard process. And then it's only valid for 6 months. You can request additional time if you build it into your work program, if it were something larger, but again, it's a pretty small subset of standards that we are looking at. And so we're not anticipating any changes, any major changes in what we've drafted already. We're only reacting to the bill that was adopted. We know there's a lot of other work that's coming at you through the comp plan, through the subsequent work that we know is on the horizon. And so we're keeping it within this very narrow scope of those few sections that are listed in the draft ordinance. And then really the interim ordinance passage was needed due to the processing timelines. We just couldn't achieve noticing, comment periods, notifying commerce of all of that within that window. And finally, the Senate bill would be effective June 6th. So it has an effect in the state. So we're looking for a vote this evening with a majority plus one to make it effective immediately as we've drafted it. Just a couple other slides to run through. It kind of running through a little bit more detailed what it does. Garages and carports not required to meet the minimum parking standards, establishes an allowance for tandem parking and created a dimensional standard so there's no confusion. There's some minor allowance for gravel parking areas to remain in a non-conforming situation, not requiring a site to pave over everything if they're redeveloping. And then adjusted the dimensional standards, very, very detailed piece that is part of Public Works standard details that they've got, shrinking that standard parking stall from 8.5 feet to 8 feet. So 8 feet is the maximum width of a parking stall for a residential development project moving forward. So next steps, with the adoption, we'll come back in 60 days as required by state law. We'll complete the necessary SEPA review and produce a final ordinance within that 6-month limitation, fitting it into all the other work we're working on. So with that, happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Councilor Zorns?
Thank you for doing this.
Yeah.
There's, my own personal bias is this could be great. This is going to get a public hearing?
Yes.
Okay. I do have one concern out of this, though, and maybe you can tell me if we can, if it's something that we can make for discussion, is that garages tend to be a layer of security for residential homes for things flammable, for combustible materials, and these days, lithium batteries. I was just watching something again on the news. I think it was power tools. It wasn't even a car, where the people in the home were saved because the lithium batteries that were charging were in the garage. So as we don't require garages, how do we encourage that level of safety that garages provided as an option for future development? Is it a closet? Is it a something, is it something? But is there something in the code as we change our garage requirements that still allows for future occupiers, whether they're renters or homeowners, have a place to safely put combustibles that don't have a direct feed into a building structure? That's my question.
It's a great question. We can coordinate with our building staff, with the building code and fire code as well, fire marshal's office.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I don't think there are any other questions. We're adopting state law. It's pretty simple. Thank you. Really appreciate you coming and letting us know, and we'll look forward to seeing you again on it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Oh,
I was going to say you got off easy this time.
yeah.
I'll be back.
Yes, I do need a motion. Councilmember Curd.
Thank you. I move to adopt the interim ordinance as proposed, amending various sections of chapters 12.16 and 12.64 of the Bothell Municipal Code.
Second.
Got a motion from Councilmember Curd and a second from the Deputy Mayor. Would anybody like to speak to the motion? Seeing none, City Clerk.
Thank you. Please say yes or no when I call your name. Councilmember Zorns?
Yes.
Mayor Thompson?
Yes.
Councilmember Alders?
Yes.
Councilmember Curd?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Cabra?
Yes.
Passes 5-0 with Councilmembers Menke and Dodd absent and excused.
Thank you. And thank you, Christian. Good to see you. All right, next up, we have Agenda Bill 24089, AWC Conference Delegates. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. And pretty straightforward here on this one tonight, too, although there are two actions being sought. In your packet tonight is a brief summary of what needs to be done in the agenda bill, but included also is a letter from the Association of Washington Cities. In short, the AWC, Association of Washington Cities Conference, is coming up later this month, and there's a deadline for each city to appoint up to 3 voting delegates to participate in the annual business meeting. As of my last check, there wasn't a final agenda yet, but it's typically, if there's any bylaws changes and some officers being voted on. I will note that anyone is able to attend the meeting, both virtually and in person. However, each agency is limited to no more than 3 voting delegates. So we will be looking for who is looking to end their day on Wednesday of the conference in a business meeting, or maybe that's on Thursday, actually. And then the other item, and this is tradition for AWC as well, is that if the council so chooses, you may participate in a parade of flags where the city flags are marched through the convention center, and we do need a flag bearer if that's to be the case. Not saying that you're committed to it, but I will note that I already saw that the ceremonial flag is packed up and ready to be mailed to AWC. So we're obviously presuming you're going to say yes. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you. This is appointment by consensus is all the council needs to do. If you can choose 3 participants to vote, and if there is somebody who would like to be the flag bearer, and then staff will follow up with AWC tomorrow to make sure we've submitted everybody's names on time.
And who else going?
So our total attendance, I think, Mayor, is you, Councilmember Aldrich, Councilmember Menke, and Councilmember Zorns.
Cool. We got to draw straws for it or something.
Draw straws. 4 of you, 4 positions.
I know Councilmember Aldrich had really enjoyed being the flag. Like you had expressed interest in doing that again. Is that still the case?
Yeah, I am interested in doing that, and I would gladly carry a flag instead of attend a business meeting.
Was that the deal?
I think someone who carries a flag ought to attend the business meeting. That's okay. Shout out to Aaron, but I fought hard to get those flags. So it's I really am not horribly invested. I just want that flag walking down. But it's a privilege and an honor to walk that flag, and ought to be willing to go to the business meeting as well.
Technically, the flag won't be walking.
That would be frightening.
Okay, yeah. I can't do the flag, but I'm happy to go to the business meeting or to not go to the business meeting. There's a chance that I'll have something with my daughter on Friday that would make it so I would need to leave on Thursday, but I don't know. Do you want to?
Yeah,
you do the flag and the 3 of us do the business meeting, and if we need to play it by ear and move things around, we move things around.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Sound good? Any objection? All right. Ben, if you're watching, you're a voting delegate. Do we need a motion for that?
No, I think we'll take this and
Cool.
get it submitted. And agreed, I think that if you make decisions once you're there, I don't think it'll be held against you, so.
Cool.
Yep.
Awesome. Let's see, it is 7:05. We are going to take a 15-minute break, and we will be back here at 7:20 for a study session. Welcome back, everybody. Here we are, ready for a study session. We've got Agenda Bill 24090, review of the 2025 through 2030 six-year transportation improvement plan. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. And yeah, we do have one study session tonight. And as you mentioned, it's around the Transportation Improvement Plan. Just for context, and as a reminder, there are many, many council discussions that have already fed into this work. So hopefully things look familiar to you. The different prioritizations, including our capital facilities plan, really inform what we're going to be talking about tonight. I'm going to turn things over to our Deputy Director of Public Works, Steve Morikawa, to provide some additional context and to continue on with introductions, and we'll have a conversation and expect this to come back to council before July 1st. So with that, I'll turn things over to Steve.
Thank you, City Manager Stannard. Good evening, everybody. I have next to me Sherman Gong, our transportation planner. Sherman is the one who kind of pulls this document together, but there are a lot of people behind this. One of the biggest things to try to put a document like this together is actually to do cost estimating for the projects and actually put them into a timeline and identify sources of funding. So there are a lot of capital engineers. Each one has several projects that have to feed into this document. So tonight, we will be talking and seeking your feedback on the six-year transportation improvement program. We're prepared to come back to council on June 25th for a public hearing, if that works out after tonight's meeting, and potentially consideration for adoption. Typically, this is due by July 1st of every year on an annual basis. So a little bit of history. Every year we come back to you with the six-year tip. So the last one was on June 27, 2023, and that one was actually after in the fall of 2022, we actually adopted the CFP. So it looked pretty much mirrored what we adopted as the CFP. And we're back here again. This year is kind of an off year. We're trying to anticipate what the CFP is going to look like. And then the following year, again, we will match the CFP. So what is a TIP, a Transportation Improvement Program? It's an annual planning document. It is a subset of the CFP, the Capital Facility Plan. It is required by the state. We have to submit it theoretically by July 1st. I don't think they'll come after us, but theoretically we're supposed to submit it by July 1st every year. And often it is a question on grants whether your project is in your six-year TIP. So sometimes it's a qualifier for grants. The six-year TIP itself is actually the spreadsheet on page 100. That's the one we turn into the state. Everything else, the project map, the project descriptions, is just for our benefit. When we put it on the website and when we talk to people, it gives a little bit more information. The transportation needs list is actually not part of the TIP. It is a list of projects that are currently in plans, like our 2015 adopted comp plan, our Canyon Park adopted plan, and our downtown adopted plan that have not yet gotten funds. So we keep a list to make sure we don't lose track of everything. So the TIP and the CFP, Capital Facility Plan, how is it different? The 7-year CFP is done every 2 years through a public process, and it includes all capital projects, not just transportation. So there's utility, facilities, there's debt management and everything in there. The 6-year TIP is really a subset of the CFP that we've adopted and gone through a public process. And again, it's required annually, and it's required for grant applications, so we want to keep doing it. Why 7 years, people have asked? Because our budget's on a 2-year cycle. So in the first year, we have 7 years planned out, and in the second year of our budget, we still have 6 years planned out, and we meet the 6-year TIP requirement. So because we're on a 2-year cycle, it's 7 years versus a 6-year cycle. So where we are, in 2022, we adopted in March the 6-year TIP. And then we started the CFP process, and in that fall, we adopted the CFP. And so the following year in 2023, we could have adopted the TIP to match it as early as possible. We just, workload-wise, waited longer. This year, we're adopting the TIP before the July 1st deadline again. We try to do our best to predict what the CFP is going to include. We're going through that process now from March through sometime in the fall. And in the fall, we'll adopt the CFP, and then we start all over again next year, sometime between January and June. We'll adopt the TIP again and match it to the CFP. So there's a few projects that we are deleting from the last CFP. That's because we're going to finish these 3 projects completely, and we won't need any more funding. So one of them is the 185th Utility Roadway Project, which is happening right behind us, and this is actually a photo of looking by the post office toward the fire station. And the other 2 are preservation projects that we anticipate will be completely done this year. There are a few projects we're actually deleting from, because what we're going to do with these 4 safety programs is we're recommending put them into one safety program. Rather than have line items 4 times and amounts of money for specific safety program items, we're recommending having one safety program. What that does is allow us to have a little bit more flexibility. We can't count on a project, for example, a traffic calming project, X amount of dollars every year. It's typically more up and down. And this would allow us to kind of flip-flop between these line items and allow us to kind of react and be able to take advantage of grants and things that need to be done as necessary. So that's one of the recommendations. You will see this in the old one, and this would not be in the new one. However, you will see the safety program take its place. And the amount of funding every year is about the same. The other ones that we're adding is a sound transit. Well, let me go up to the photo. So the bottom photo, this is on 23rd and about 243rd. This crosswalk, we're having RRFB put in. I think we recently got grant funding for it, and we use the safety program as match money. So that's kind of how we use the programs. The Sound Transit Access Improvement Projects we're adding on there as part of the I-405 Sound Transit BRT project. They have an access funding source that they provide to agencies kind of on a semi-competitive basis. And this will provide some funds to finish some sidewalks, some crossings, safer crossings on the I-405 corridor within Bothell, and it's fully funded. So we've worked with them to estimate costs. We've tried to be very conservative, and if we can get it done with what we plan to, then it'll be 100% funded by Sound Transit. The 102nd Avenue Northeast Shared Use Path is a separate project. We've submitted for a federal design grant, and we actually are using bike program funds as the match money. That's the $1.5 million that you guys set aside previously in case we had a grant opportunity. This is a grant opportunity. We don't have to use all the 1.5, but we're using part of it. And the photo, I guess the rendering up here, that's the 102nd Avenue between East Riverside Drive and the south portion of the bridge. We'd also go from the north portion of the bridge to Main Street and put a 12-foot wide shared use path there. In the future, when we replace the 102nd Avenue Bridge, we'd fill in that section. The other 2 are actually overlay projects, and they're put in because sometime in the future we anticipate applying for grants with match money from the Pavement Preservation Program. So just to remind everybody, in addition to projects, individual projects that come and go, there are programs that are ongoing and don't really end. That's pavement preservation, sidewalk and walkway, the safety one, which again, we're combining, bridge program, bicycle program, crosswalk program. And Canyon Park Transportation Demand Management is kind of interesting because it's not a project, it's more like a program, but it does have a discrete 4-year period. So it's kind of an odd duck. I think right now it's listed as a project, but called a program because it's not really building anything. So the next steps, after tonight would be on the 25th, hold a public hearing. And then again, if everything goes well, we would recommend adoption of the resolution. And that would allow us to meet, again, the July 1st deadline. And that's about all I have. And I would be happy to try to answer any questions.
And really quick, I'll just chime in and just to make sure there's no surprises when this does come back. As Steve noted, we're anticipating that the public hearing would happen and action would be taken on the same night. We haven't really been doing that as much, but considering that, again, there's not a lot of new content here, we were thinking that that would work and it would also keep us on the deadline. But again, if there's any concerns with that and if you'd want us to, again, I think there's probably some acceptable risk of bringing this back in July too, if you feel like more time is necessary, or you just want to also play it by ear on the 25th. If we had a line of people with questions or concerns and you wanted more time, we can always do that too. So just want to clarify that from a process standpoint, but we are anticipating that it'll probably be a clearer next step on the 25th too. So with that, now I'll let you have a discussion and comments.
Thank you for bringing this forward to us and for explaining how the TIP and the CFP kind of work together. It sounds like a really iterative process, and we can just make sure that they are working well together as we do these updates. You mentioned something about the crosswalk improvement on slide 9, and you said an acronym, and I'd love to know what that acronym was. Can we phone a friend? There were R's and there were B's in it. So
Okay.
Rectangular. Okay. Cool. Thank you. I have an answer. And then also on 190th, the overlay project, it describes here that it's between Bothell Way and 104th. So that's going up Maywood Hill. And I'm wondering, can the portion of 190th that recently buckled going up West Hill also be included? There was some repairs that were made. And I have photos to share with you. I've seen some recent concerning signs of more stuff happening underneath the road there. And so I don't know how possible that is, but I do know that there was recent repairs made during the winter with some storms and pipes underneath the road, and it still looks kind of iffy up there. So, could it be included?
Let me look at that.
Okay.
It could be extended. Oh, sorry. Let me look at that. It could potentially be extended. It also could be something that if it's a short enough stretch that we just take care of it without a grant.
Okay.
So, thank you for bringing it up.
Thank you. I also just want to say that, the projects that you've named make a lot of sense. I think collapsing the projects into a safety program, that plan is, I think, very practical. And I really love hearing that bike funds can be used to build multi-use paths and potential bike facilities. So thank you for all of the work that you're doing in this area.
I have just a couple questions. I was excited to see the, and I don't know if it was on the last one, the multi-use trail along the King County right-of-way on Riverside Drive. And to that end, there's a project on the transportation needs list, number 26, the pedestrian bicycle bridge over the Sammamish River. We are looking at 2025 to 2030, and in that time frame, we are probably going to have bus rapid transit with a bus stop right underneath the bridge right there. And there's a pretty significant population of folks that live in either multifamily housing or manufactured homes across the freeway. And man, if they could walk to the bus stop or ride a bike to the bus stop, that would be really, really cool. So I would love to see this moved onto the actual plan. And I guess my question is in terms of interplay between this and the CFP, like if we put it on the CFP and it's not on the TIP, is that problematic for future grant options? Does it need to be on both? What does that look like?
I think it could happen either way. I would recommend we do it through a CFP program because that's the actual process and the public process we do. So if we modify that, then everybody kind of sees it.
Yeah.
And then next year we can put it on the tip. The only question would be if a grant became available between now and next year, which for a bridge like that's probably unlikely. One other thing we could do, and again, this is a talk we can have in the CFP, but we talked about the 1.5 million in the bike project. So that's seed money for me. And there's a couple things that I think in the CFP we would propose that we use that for. I think that bridge project is fairly high rated, so that could be one thing that we do kind of a planning study, because the location of the bridge is probably the most important thing. Where would we put it? Where would it make sense? Where does topography allow us to put it? The other one is 228th Street. From a bike and a ped point of view, 228th is very important. So what we're trying to do is put those two together with safety projects and put into one big project, and it's a huge project. But our recommendation is probably to chop it into 4 bits, bite-sized pieces. And then another use for that bike money could be to start, again, planning that. Because one of the difficult things we have is trying to scope a project before we go out to grants. And the worst thing that can happen is we're a little too optimistic and we don't ask for enough grant funds, and then we really put ourselves kind of in a hole and trying to catch up. So those planning funds could be from programs, and that could be another way to approach it. And then I think you have probably a year or two, like I said, until the next federal grant cycle, until you really, really need to get this thing in there.
Got it. How much work would it be to get it on the TIP right now if we did want to, if we did think there was an opportunity over the course of the next year we didn't want to miss?
If the council's okay with taking the funding out of the bike program, I think it's fairly straightforward. If we're looking for new funds, then it becomes a little more difficult. So what I would recommend is we would, as an example, if you look on the spreadsheet, there are programs like paving programs and sidewalk, and then we identify specific projects. We could do the same thing with that bridge and call it a subset of the bike program. And what we could do is, like I said, show some seed money over the next couple of years.
Yeah.
And that would kind of put it on the 6-year tip at this point.
Okay. No, I would love to get this on the tip somehow if it's a subset of the bike plan or safety plan or whatever we have going on. Just because I do think there is going to be more opportunity for that kind of thing moving forward. And it would be really nice to have that when there's a new bus stop right there.
That was a request from residents in the neighborhood too.
Yeah.
In the past.
So, and just to be clear, like the question was like getting it on the tip, and there wouldn't be a cost associated with that. It would just be a question of where it came from or went on the tip and like what funds we would then use to try to fund it eventually. Not, it would cost money to get it on the tip.
It wouldn't cost money to get on the tip. What we try to do though is use allocated funds that reflect in the CFP.
Yeah.
So if I'm trying to find, let's say we need $200,000 in the next 2 years, we want to start designing that thing. I would have to find where that source of funding. So when we have our CFP funding, I would say, okay, where is that going to come from? And is there enough money in REIT 2 or whatever? There is already funding for just this purpose in the bike program.
Perfect.
So if we take it out of the bike program and say we're going to use that to start this particular project, much like I'm going to propose probably in the CFP process for 228th Street, that's a lot easier. We don't have to worry about all the math and the funding and everything. It's just basically how we're listing the funds.
Awesome.
Yep.
I would love to see this on the tip and underneath the bike plan.
I'll echo that. I think it makes sense to use bike plan as sort of the seed money, and since it is a bike project. And I'd love to be responsive to the community and really make the changes that are happening in that area connect and make sense. Instead of doing like one project after another, like maybe we could get them to work together and like be completed sooner and be working together sooner. So thank you.
I have a question, and I think it's more of a curiosity question. if I was understanding you correctly, is that we want to get the tip before the CFP. And what happens when we get to the point where we've put the CFP together and we go, oh, we need to go back and amend? Do they allow us to amend the tip?
From a practical point of view, I was just talking to Public Works Director Leonard. From a practical point of view, projects don't really move that quick.
Well, that's
So
what that
every
went through
2
my
years
mind
is-
too.
yeah.
Just save it for the following year.
Yeah, so the tip is something required that we need to submit at least once a year. So essentially what we're doing every year is just trying to match the CFP.
Okay, so would not be a big deal to wait 6 months.
And putting it in timing context too is that while we'll start talking about the CFP as soon as next week, the adoption will be somewhere like the first Tuesday in December. So that'll be when the CFP becomes adopted. And then you're already looking at by July. I mean, that's just right around the
Right,
corner. So there is an aspect of like, yeah, I loved the explanation of the 6-year, 7-year cadence of this, as it really is sort of that it is an iterative process. So
Right.
yeah,
Right.
like many of our financial plans, they're out of date as soon as we adopt them, and we're always looking at how we're going to fix and adjust. So I think this would be similar.
And this point in history, even more so. Yeah. I just have a few comments because I want to get them off my chest. One was I saw your note. I'm not going to note all the things that were good work that's here but the 102nd bridge replacement, and that I hope that I live to see it. But, right. Okay. And then whoever is tracking Horse Creek, is it Horse Creek that has rockery failing to go in and fix that? Yes. Whoever spotted that, my personal thanks to them. That's a important part of our city. Quiet, but an important part. And grateful to see that Main Street with the bollards is still on there. East Riverside Drive. This is really why I wanted to make a comment because back when Aaron was in the trenches, there was a little bit of groveling of, can we get a trail for foot traffic, for along East Riverside Drive for our invisible population that lives in the manufactured homes there. There's a bus stop on a curve and no sidewalk to stand on. All that. It's not especially safe. So I'm very grateful that this is on here, that staff put this on here. And I don't want to put more cooks in the kitchen than you need for this. But if at some point you need people here on council to advocate for this with King County or whoever, pick and we'll help. We will help where it's helpful in making this move forward, because I know it's a complicated project, but it's an important one.
Thanks for the update. I really appreciate all the projects and all the generations of tips that were before this one that informed it too. So this is an historic document. Anyway, I wanted to ask some clarifying questions about projects that are on the border of the city or just outside. So I noticed that there's a 228th widening project between 35th and 39th that is in Snohomish County jurisdiction. And there are some affected wetlands and buffers and issues. Why is this not on Snohomish County's tip and ours instead?
That's a great question, Karsten.
I'm not in public works.
It actually is. We're partnering with them, and it's kind of a 75% project. We're 25%. The history of that is that it's a part of our north-south corridor, which is weird because that's east-west portion. But way back when, we were going to try to break 39th straight through between 228th and 240th. And what started in, I think, the 1980s with Snohomish County before it was incorporated into Bothell, as a couple $1 million project became like an $80 million project. And it also affected a lot of wetlands, steep slopes, crossed fish-bearing streams and all kinds of things. So at some point, the council said, this is never going to happen. So let's improve the north-south corridor, which consists of 39th, take a right turn on 228, take a left turn on 35th, take a left turn on 240th, take a right turn on 39th, and that's your corridor. So this project essentially tries to work with the intersections and that little stretch of road there and try to make those turns a little bit more workable. And that's the project. One of the things that we've been working with Snohomish County on is their current plan are still on-street bikes. We're working with them to get a protected bike facility on that particular piece, even though it's in Snohomish County. And they've been working with us with it very nicely. So we're currently, excuse me, we had design funds from grant. We have right-of-way funds, which we're yet to use, and we're going to enter the right-of-way phase. That's likely to be a two-phase project. We did not go after construction funds this year. Both parties weren't quite ready, so we'll probably wait at least one more grant cycle.
For other projects in the walkway and sidewalk program that are on the border of the city with other jurisdictions, does the city kind of also do a cost share situation, or are those mainly on the side of the road that is Bothell? How does that work?
Funny you should ask. It does get complicated. If it's fairly straightforward and the missing sidewalk that your particular jurisdiction needs is on your half of the roadway, it's pretty straightforward. It gets less straightforward when the sidewalk that you need is actually on their half of the roadway, because there are certain locations where the entire roadway is owned by one jurisdiction or the other. And so you have a sidewalk and it's missing gaps. And one gap may be particularly important to you, but less so for the other jurisdiction. In those cases, we have currently ongoing discussion about what's important to them, what's important to us, and somehow can we get into an agreement that we can get their side done, we get our side done, and neither party loses out or has to pay for the others. But it does get complicated, yes.
Thanks for that. Yeah, I imagine it's very complicated, and it varies depending on location too.
The question I have is about the safety program consolidation. Like, how does that work from the requirement standpoint? For example, how come you didn't consolidate road improvements? You just had actual projects instead of saying, here's the road improvement program and here's the sub items, just like you did with the safety. Like, how does that work?
So when I think of a road improvement project, I think of larger projects, and they typically will include pedestrian projects, bike projects, and safety aspects. So safety aspects should be in any design for a new roadway, but sometimes you have an existing roadway, you're doing some improvements, and you've identified a very specific safety issue that needs to be taken care of. You might as well do everything at once. So those are the roadway improvement projects. The safety program, the way I look at that is the projects are typically smaller. They're more like RRFBs, the crossings. She's laughing at me. If they rise to the level.
I just had Googled it too, and I had it pulled up and then I closed it. I'm sorry. Could have helped.
If they rise to the level, as an example of like a roundabout is actually a safety device, and it competes well for safety funds, even though it actually also could make your throughput better. But it is a safety device. But it's a very expensive one. It's a couple $1 million, and our program can't afford that. But what our program can do is like seed money. So as an example, this year, we decided it would be a good idea to submit 2 federal grants into the Snohomish County portion. And one of them is the 35th to 40th intersection, which is a 4-way stop. It's a safety issue. And we went through and we spent our own money because the developer was on the other corner, and we've basically determined that a roundabout would be the best solution there for all ped, bike, and traffic. And we've gone after a design grant. And again, because of the funding situation and the timing and everything, I'm using the safety program as seed money because we don't need that much for design, because that is a safety project. So that's how that safety program is kind of used in my book. We do smaller projects, we do ongoing things, but it also could be seed money for slightly larger
But it's
projects as
not
well.
dictate, the way you consolidated, it's not like, there's flexibility within, because the tip has to be submitted by July, it's a state requirement. But there's no under requirement saying you have to specify projects of this amount explicitly versus they just say submit something and it's up
Yeah.
to us to determine what it is that
Yeah.
we're submitting. And
Right.
then we have your internal criteria of the size and all that, and that
Yes.
stuff. Okay.
Correct.
That was my question,
Okay.
really, just to clarify. Yeah,
All
thank
right.
you. The other question I have is about the 102nd bridge, because there's going to be something before and something after. But like the bridge itself, when is that going to happen? Because then if you design a bike lane, for example, before Riverside to the bridge, but then the bridge is going to be there, somebody has to merge onto the street and then merge back onto the, right?
There
Or
actually
go on
is a,
sidewalk. How is it?
you
how
know,
is it
there's
gonna
that fiberglass walkway. It's not the best. We continually have to maintain it, but it is about 6.5. It's not a full 12-foot wide, but it is usable at this point. For the 102nd Avenue Bridge, we put this project on a few years ago to try to bring it up to our attention that it's getting old and it does need to be replaced. And there are, they call them structural defects and they call them functional. So the functional part would be the 12-foot shared use path as well as whatever lanes need to be there for the roadway and sidewalks. We have put in for a grant through the federal process to try to get a planning grant for type, size, and location. And that would help us determine what the bridge needs to look like. One of the biggest questions is how do you replace it while keeping the bridge if you need usage of it? And what is that going to cost? Because again, we want to know if we're looking for $30 million, $40 million, because we don't want to wind up being short again. So if we're fortunate enough to get it, likely next year we will start that planning study. And our goal is to kind of be ready in probably 2 grant cycles from now, maybe 4 cycles from now, going after potentially either the way the bridge funds work, you can go after design and construction funds at once. So we would probably be doing that. And the time frame would be design, construction somewhere from 27 through 29, 30, around there.
And how does that, with the, because I know this is a 7-year,
Yeah.
it's a 3-section
Yep.
project, right? So section 1, how's the timing going to work with those 3?
So if we get the funding for the shared use path, likely it would be 27 or 28, we start design. The funny thing about that is there might be a right-of-way phase, even though we might own the property, but there's still a phase that we might have to go through. So ultimately, they might be almost in line with each other. I mean, one might be going like this, and depending how successful we're on the grants, we may have to do one or the other. So yes, we will have to be a little smart about it and figure out how best to tie it in, you know.
Speaking of funding, how do we, is there, to go after federal grants, can we get not just going through the official, can we work with our representatives to earmark some funding for us? Or is that also included already in your planning? Or is it separate? I mean, if it's a $40 million thing, then maybe we should talk to, somebody to earmark something in some upcoming
Yeah.
congressional budget,
Right. So we use that as our last alternative, and typically on our larger projects like Bothell Way, multimodal, which, $80+ million. We're not quite sure what scale the bridge would be, but it could very well be that we may need help. And it could be legislative money or federal money, depending on the opportunities. We typically try to line up our traditional and well-used grants first. But we are not, you're right, we won't rule out the necessity of other funding sources.
Does, request for funding speed, if we say we go this route, I understand you have a process to go, but if we go talk to our Rep. Delbene and saying, hey, we have this much, we need this much money, would that speed up any timelines, or does it even matter?
I hesitate to do that before we get the type, size, and location done, because I don't know if I'm asking for 30 million or 50 million, and that makes a huge difference. And it might even trigger whether we actually need to look for federal funds or not. So, we can only dip in so many times, and the less we do, the better for other larger projects that we have needs for. And so I really would like and suggest that we finish the type, size, and location, and then we have a really solid plan, and that actually helps us get grant funding and come up with a financial plan.
Deputy Mayor, just so you know, we've had meetings with Congresswoman Delbene and her team kind of talking about potential future projects, and this one's definitely been a part of those discussions and is on the radar.
Cool. Thank you. You said you want to make a last resort. Is there something, it's like you don't want to burn your bridges, so to speak? Or is that, or is it, or do you, why, is it a political thing? Why would you not want to do it as many times as you, there's only so many big projects, so why don't you want to approach?
Certain projects probably compete better than others, and in our case, we have a number of projects that are. We have the Bothell Way project, which is fairly big. The 228th Street project's fairly big, although most of that's in Snohomish County. We still have a Beardsley widening project we're in design as well. That's going to need funding. The bridge we'd like to do within the next 7 years or so. And then we just put in, as an example, the first phase of 9th, which was the multimodal project, to try to put in road improvements and bike and ped, that's a very large project as well. I guess what I'm saying is, if we can get a handle on the cost and we can use traditional methods to fund these things, typically it takes a lot of effort, and you only have so many times that you can go to the federal government or even the state legislature, every 2 years or every whatever. Not as guaranteed to get it as well. So just all that together, you try to minimize, I think, how many times you go to those and use it for the ones that you really strategically need.
And on this 102nd Avenue project too, that in particular, as Steve mentioned, getting some of the design work completed, then if we were going to have an ask, we'd also have just the greater confidence of what are we asking for, as he mentioned. And one of the things that we don't ever want to do is to ask for money and make a claim of here's what we're going to do with it, and then find out it wasn't sufficient. So there is an aspect of, I think, that hold on to that tool, be thinking about that in terms of certainly bridges, or again, 9th Avenue is a great example too of a long stretch of road where there's improvements that need to be done, some complexity. But it's kind of knowing that moment of when to go after it too.
Oh, I understand. Once we have design and scope and all that stuff, you can say, okay, I need 50 million instead of, you don't want to come back again. It's like, oh, oops, we need 20 more million, by the way, So, I understand. I was saying if we can get, because I'm sure you're designing way ahead of time. Some of the things, there's multiple, there are different timelines, I guess, a lot of the projects, but I'm just thinking to accelerate some of those things. And the federal government obviously has a lot of money, because a lot of it is being spent in places that shouldn't be spent, but separate topic. But I'm saying we need to have, we need to figure out a way to go and tap into that resource.
I think one way we'll talk to you during the CFP phase is exactly kind of that. So one of the things we would like to do is do a lot of the planning upfront work, like a type, size, and location for a bridge, but do it for the roadway project or the pedestrian bridge. That helps tremendously. Because the difficulty in the past was there wasn't always funds for that. So we're trying to develop a system where we have some funds for that, so we can do our homework up front. And then what it does is essentially kind of minimizes the risk of going after funds and not having enough because we didn't do our homework enough. The other thing we can do is there are other projects that may be on a smaller scale if we somehow can afford it ourselves, because design theoretically costs like 25% of the total cost. If we can fund smaller projects up to a certain level and be ready to construct, those compete even better as well. So those two things, I think, are a little bit what we're probably going to talk to you a little bit about in this CFP process. And the mechanism for us is those programs.
Thank you.
I think we got quiet. I think we're good. Thank you very much. Appreciate the presentation, appreciate the work and all of this, and we'll see you next month. Or, yeah, oh, that's right, it's June. I was, in my mind, I was thinking that, but I can almost date.
The longest May ever.
Yeah. It's like, never mind. We're in a public meeting. Sometimes I forget. I believe that is all we have in, out here. We have a closed session. We will now adjourn to closed session to discuss labor negotiations for 30 minutes pursuant to RCW 4230-144A with no action. The time is 8:01 p.m. and we will adjourn the meeting from 8:31 from closed session.
Recording stopped.